Hey guys, spoke with Roman, Beylin, and Brent Sanders about technology due diligence today. A really fascinating conversation. We left out Igor Belogorudsky from Fast CTO. We'll have him in the next one. He is mentioned, but that's someone who I always recommend for technology due diligence as well. Thought it was a fascinating conversation. Hope you enjoy it. Disclaimer from the always present legal team. Podcast conversations don't necessarily reflect the views of BizNexus Incorporated. Everything you hear is informational news and updates from around the industry. We're not recommending any investments. We're not offering any investment advice. Be sure to do your own homework. All right. Brent, Roman, welcome.
Thank you.
You guys are kind enough to show up today for an exit prep session on technical diligence. So we have a lot of owners on the BizNexus platform in the marketplace who have eyeballs on the community, and they come in through exit prep. The goal is to help educate from a first-time seller, right? So someone who's been building something, has a technical architecture that a buyer will want to vet. What can a seller do to help prepare for diligence so that they're not going to get caught, they're not going to get dinged on valuation through that process? We've got Roman Beylin from Dilio, which is a diligence partner with BizNexus. And Roman, I'm going to let you kind of lead this whole thing, but real quickly, if you're looking at diligence, be ridiculously niche, depending on what you're looking for on the buy side, on the sell side. And Roman has a platform where he matches you up with the right candidate for just diligence. That's his wheelhouse, is all things diligence. And so Roman was kind enough to reach out to Brent, who is a representative on the platform, on the Dilio platform. And Brent, I think Roman ultimately chose you to step up today because you do deal with a variety of companies, small, medium, and large. And maybe we can get into that and just some of the top. We only have 20 minutes today. So maybe the top things that you'd want a first-time seller and owner to take away from this call, to take away from this session when it's done. So Roman, I'll let you introduce yourself and just run with it.
Yeah, so Adam, thanks for having us on here. So again, Dilio, expert network focused on due diligence. If you're looking to have anything done, come to us. We'll help you out. And so Brent, let's kind of get started here. So, from a business owner's perspective, someone who is just getting ready to list their business, what should they do to really prepare their business for what's to come on the technical due diligence?
Yeah, it's a good question. It applies, as Adam mentioned, it applies to companies a little bit differently across small, medium, large. So I'm going to speak in broad generalities and start focusing, I guess, on what's going to apply the most to probably the small to medium-sized businesses. These are what we see the most quantity of. And when it comes to this question, have the most to gain by thinking through it. So the first thing that I would tell people to kind of do some brush up on, or at least try to get organized around is licensing. What do you have? What is your tech stack built? Obviously, assuming you understand what the tech stack is, you have an architecture. You may or may not have a dev team in-house. You might have a contracting team. Create an item, a ticket for them to work on to just kind of, let's go through our requirements. Let's go see what we're importing. It's less important about how far back these libraries or references are, but it's like, what is the core of our technology? Has the licensing changed? Are there any kind of bumps coming up in the road? Because there are a lot of interesting and new open source licenses beyond, what has historically been in place that can have a significant impact on valuation once you go into like the diligence process and uncover that late in the game. Can be a kind of a heartbreaker.
And, what do you mean by licenses? Is that, so from someone who, I'm not a tech person, when I think of licenses, I think of, I pay for Microsoft Office, I pay for Norton antivirus. Is that what you mean, or is it something different?
It's something different. Good call. Yeah. So this is not like your Adobe license, your subscription for Photoshop. This is assuming your product is built using some open source software technologies. You're going to have a whole graph of dependencies that are going to make up what your application is, right? You're going to be using some library for your requests, some library for communicating with, other services. These are usually the case for most modern applications that are getting built today, web applications, mobile applications, and those are usually licensed under like an open source license, a GPL license. I won't get into the specific licensing models, but they're generally like the extent is you can use it for commercial software. You can redistribute it. You just have to give us a credit. And if you change it, you may have to share that with us. That's like 90% of the licenses out there. However, there are evolutions that have started popping up where maybe a product that's been around for 10, 20 years, or maybe 10 years, I should say, decided to kind of rework how they're going to license the product. And so as you go to upgrade, as a buyer is going to look, they're probably going to want to maintain or upgrade your software dependencies and packages and all the pieces that make up your product. They may run into a roadblock. And that's the one thing that I would say is the most important to get out in front of before you head out to market.
Mm-hmm. That's thinking about the software side. Is there anything to do there in terms of the hardware and from a personnel perspective? Is there anything a seller should think about?
Yeah, I mean, in thinking about around the realm of licensing, probably not so much. I mean, hardware usually doesn't come packaged like this where it could change, right? Mm-hmm. That's the part of this that if you are using some dependencies like this, as you go to upgrade, the licensing can change. You can see, common products being relicensed. But on the personnel side of things, like depending on what your profile is, think about listing the company. I think understanding, the contributions of the team members, making sure that you understand what they do from a tech perspective is always important as well. Yeah.
A lot of the listeners here are going to be non-technical, right? So I come from an M&A background, not a tech background. I work with, Fast CTO, with Igor Belogorski to help with the product. But if I were going to go sell BizNexus tomorrow, I'd have no idea what the hell to do. Am I talking with my lawyer? Would I be speaking with like a West Hill counsel, or would I be speaking with Fast CTO?
Yeah.
So who would I go to? Because just real quick, because so many of the buyers are going to do that. Like they're going to go to somebody to make sure that they can do the diligence embedded on the buy side. So as a seller, how do I start the process? What should I expect to pay? I mean, maybe if you could just shed a little light on that.
No, that's a great way to get right at the question. So it's both. It can be an attorney and a CTO, fractional CTO, somebody. What you need to do is have that CTO prepare a list of the dependencies. What are the packages we're using? A project could have 100 of these. It could have 10 of these. It's some number between 10 and 100 usually, right? It's vague, and they're going to come back to you with a list of, you're going to see things like MIT, Apache, GPL, right? Those are the types of licenses. There's a known universe of these. And along with hey, we're using this and this in a spreadsheet, and they're going to give you that. And then you're going to take that to your attorney, and your attorney may be able to look at it right away. And, most M&A firms have an IP / technical licensing specialist, run it by them. That's one of the best things that you could do early on to save a little bit of heartbreak, in terms of what that's going to cost. I mean, it's a couple hours of an attorney's time, which mileage varies greatly.
Yeah, couple hours.
Couple hours, yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like it all starts off with documentation, right? So that's the first thing that a business seller should really look at. Create a document, all the software that's used, all the interdependencies, who's in charge of each piece, right? So just have that outlined. Is that the right way to think about it?
That's a huge plus. If I'm coming in and looking at a deal and I have that, you're going to get ahead really quickly. Versus, again, the main risk that you're trying to mitigate here is we find something at the end, and are already beyond at the end of the diligence, and it's going to kill essentially the valuation.
Right. So you've been on both sides, right? You've performed due diligence. You've also, I'm sure, had someone perform due diligence on your business. Thinking about, I guess, what would a business seller, what should they be prepared for? Like someone hires you, let's say on the buy side, and you come in to due diligence on a business, what's kind of the first thing that either you request or you look at? Kind of what's the first thing you go to?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a rubric that's generally 5 different areas. It's the code base. And again, this varies depending on whether if it's a hardware company, it's going to be totally different. This is more for software SaaS businesses specifically, is what I would say. We're going to look at the code. We're going to look at the sort of testing infrastructure. We're going to look at the source and the product management around, the roadmap. What have you guys been doing? What's been changing? Developer, how your team works. If you have an existing team, And then the final thing is around just like your server setup, your infrastructure. And those are generally the domains that we roll through. So having a handle on those things, having access, having, passwords, I would say this is one of the easiest things to make Diligence successful on a tech site is just, if you don't have a single source of password, I can't recommend like one password enough. And that can be a project. If a lot of companies, they'll have 30, 40, 50 different AWS, Heroku, different logins for different systems, centralizing access control, like that's a huge time saver for you. There's a whole bunch of advantages, but if you're not doing that already, if you have like a spreadsheet somewhere that's kind of out of date and, not only is that a whole security thing, but access control and getting that wrangled, it's worth the $100 a month or whatever you're going to pay for your team to use it. But those are the main areas. Diving into like, what do you need to be prepared for as a seller? I think, people come in with fresh eyes and they're going to throw evaluations at you of like, hey, this is based on different standards. This is good, bad. We give this a letter grade. That's how I do it, is like an A to a D or an F even. And we try to kind of give a report card as we go through the diligence. But I think the other thing that they should also be ready to do is dust off, anything that maybe hasn't been touched in a while, but is still in use. So legacy code is where my head goes to, and be ready to reach out to folks maybe that were part of the team before, founding members, anybody who's in chain of custody is also the other big part to licensing here. It's like, you're going to want to ideally line up the people that have worked on whatever is in your code base in production still. You're going to want to make them available, if not for an interview, but just to be able to reference for yourself, to fill in backstory, because you're going to get questions about why is it this way? Why is it that way? How does this work? Right. Can you diagram that for us? These are the things that I'd be ready to go into, which as a non-technical owner is going to be a matter of, line up the people you need to connect me with, line up the people that, can answer the questions for you.
Hey guys, quick plug for our premium subscription on BizNexus. If you're on our premium subscription, you get access to all of our platform deals, not only the entire universe of active broker deals out there. We're basically an MLS for M&A in that regard, but also access to proprietary deals and pre-sim broker teasers as those come in on a regular basis. Not only that, with an annual subscription, you also will now get access to our Deal Origination Accelerator program in our community, which has collaborative workshops to help you build up your proprietary deal flow funnel yourself. So we cover outreach campaigns across email, LinkedIn, phone, snail mail, how to not only get in front of those prospects, but stay in front of them over time, which has become so important over the past 12 to 18 months as everything's just gotten so noisy out there with all the new buyers in the market. We have workshops on setting up Pipedrive CRM for M&A, leveraging that tool with your interns, with automations, the way we do it with BizNexus Concierge. The works. We're basically giving you the playbook to our agency, BizNexus Concierge, through this Deal Origination Accelerator bundle. So check out our premium subscription on the platform. Let us know if you have any questions. Under 10 million, how many sellers, if you had to guess, right? How many owners are taking the steps to do this? How many owners are letting the buyer do this, essentially, to come through and do the diligence and then being reactive in terms of fielding these inquiries? How many sellers are actually coming to the table prepared for this under 10 million valuation?
Yeah, that's a great question. The distinction I'm seeing is the folks that work with brokers tend to not have this available. This is like the brokers will put a lot of regimented, like, hey, you get a session, one session to do this, one session to do that, and we'll have everybody. Now, they will also generally do a good job of making sure there's always somebody on those calls or in those sessions to help, answer the questions right on the spot. It may not be, but under 10 million, the older the company, direct sellers, I think, everyone that we've worked on. So, I don't know a percentage, but I think the ones that are direct, that's usually the distinction that I'm seeing is like, if you're working with a broker, it's going to be a lot more structured. They may even help you like get an agency involved. If let's say, you don't have those people on site, work to be able to answer those questions because they know that the questions are coming. And so, yeah, that's what I've been seeing is that's the distinction actually.
Are you talking, so breaking that down, are you talking about like specialist brokers or maybe generalist M&A brokers who kind of stumble into a tech deal, right? On one hand, you've got like empire flippers and quiet lead and these specialists who really know their stuff, but then you have this ocean of intermediaries who, the industry's kind of behind on this.
Yeah, I would say the specialists. That's what I've seen is like they know what questions need to be answered. It goes a step beyond. They may not know the exact questions, but they know the realm of like, hey, we're going to need to dig into code level specifics or operations and, provide diagrams on how things work. And it may not, your question around like, do you really need to provide this? It's like a case by case basis. Everyone's different. If you're coming into a situation and you have a CTO or you have a tech team, you're going to be able to generate those things. If you don't, no seller or no buyer is going to expect you to put that together. They're going to understand the situation, and it's going to be the profile that they're buying into. So it may have an effect on the valuation is the only warning that I would say there. If like they're going to have to do that lift, it's indicative that there are going to be other things that they're going to uncover after the sale is complete potentially.
Yeah.
And I guess to follow up to that, at what point do you think it makes sense for someone who's thinking of selling the business, not ready yet, when would it make sense for them to bring on someone that can help them prepare for the technical due diligence? Is it a couple of months? Is it a year? Kind of, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, anytime. Anytime's good to just creating this like fictional business in my head, but this is indicative of a lot of deals that I see. There's always some legacy software involved. The sooner that you come to grips with like what that is and understand it and start taking care of it, the risk goes way down. Like every year, all the technology on the internet gets a year older and gets updated. And so your stack is getting a year older potentially. So if you're in a situation where you have a tech team, but they don't focus on your old stuff, or a situation where you don't have a tech team and your system just works great, but it's a ticking time bomb to an extent.
Right,
so that's
right.
It's all about legacy software to me in this space. And I embrace it. I love it. That's why I do this. That's why I work on these types of, both sides of this. We both acquire and sell. So it's a matter of as soon as possible, I think, paying attention to that stuff, and you'll always value from it. So it'll set you up if you're thinking 2 years out and like, okay, I know we're going to line up a sale. The sooner you can get a wrangle on it, the better, the happier you'll be, and the more stable the transition will go.
Right. So it sounds like you want to have enough time to mitigate any issues that are discovered, basically. That's the idea. And I guess, since you've done a lot of due diligence, what are maybe, one or two, most common things that you've seen business sellers get wrong? What are the biggest issues that you see a lot of?
So there's a couple of things. One thing that like we usually see, and the advantage that we have as an acquirer is coming in with fresh eyes. That's kind of like we're able to come into a situation. And so when you say get wrong, do you mean get wrong from like an operation, like coming in and seeing how things were being run, or get wrong from the sale, like the transition?
I think from the transition. I think just that maybe they didn't prepare in advance.
Yeah, I mean, we've been lucky enough to not see any like really big, fumbles, because that's also falls on us if we miss something. But the number one thing, it goes back to the passwords. That's always the thing that bites people is like, and it's not the passwords you know about right now. I know this is like the silly answer. It's the autofill one that like somebody's brother's AWS account that got transit. I have not worked on a deal in my career that didn't have at least one of those ever. There's one right now so we did an acquisition 4 months ago, and we haven't found that yet. But they also did an amazing job with they had a great like 1Password setup, and everything was like really well organized. But there's always something where an account was never really known about, and you unravel, like something breaks and you have to kind of unravel, and you realize, oh, this is on somebody's credit card that's like, we don't know. And so that's going back to my initial advice, get a password manager, use it religiously, and you'll save some headaches.
I had that along the way as a non-dev founder. I've learned a lot of things the hard way. And with BizNexus, I definitely fired a couple developers along the way. And it's too bad Igor's not on this call because he would have some stories to tell. But without naming my previous developer, I mean, we're talking like no source control. He had clients. It was like his dad's company, and and all of his everything that was supposed to be mine was not set up under BizNexus. It was all set up under basically like his dad. It was a nightmare. And so we dug through that mess, and like, thank God that wasn't leading up to a sale, because I would have got absolutely nothing. I mean, that was just to, go to the next phase of BizNexus. And like for me, we definitely, with exit prep, regardless of the industry, we're saying like 3 to 5 years out, you should start getting your ducks in a row. And with anything tech, like even if you can fix it quickly, you don't want to have that question mark. So if something's untested for a year or so, like that's still going to be something that a buyer can potentially take advantage of. You want to have the transition be as smooth as possible, and you don't want to have to address questions. If you can do it 2 years in advance and make changes and run your business out before you take it to market, that's a better option than doing it, taking care of this we're thinking of selling in the next 6 months, and we've got to make these fixes. Then having that question mark when you take it to market, I think, is a mistake.
Yeah, I guess to that point, another really, really important thing besides the licensing, the password management thing is kind of like a basic block and tackle. It's, having your roadmap buttoned up and done. Do not be in development and like thinking you're going to go through a transition. Be like a year away from last deploying something. The further you can be, it's great if you have an active and continuous release cycle. That's awesome. But, we've seen when companies are moving at a specific clip and then a feature breaks and then there's the transition and then we have to figure out, well, who's going to own this and the transfer over of new features. I would highly recommend being at sort of a code freeze point. It just makes life easier to evaluate, to understand, unless you are a larger company. Larger companies, you're going to see this continuous, larger deals, or it's more like, hey, we're really going to transition the operations, not necessarily the code kind of stuck in time. But
especially for all of these non-technical buyers that are out there now, because you've got, they want to buy something stable, right? So if you are an MBA and you want to run a SaaS company, that is super competitive. And the last couple of years have been crazy with that kind of stuff. But then you also have companies that need to get tech and they're all buying into it, but they don't want to buy something they want to buy something stable and proven and is built and it lumps into their company.
Which I would argue isn't really tech, right? It's like, it's not a characteristic of like, you can't just buy it and not take care of it. I always call these, they're living things. You got to nurture them. You got to take care of them. They do require resources and they're living. It's like, and if you ignore them, they will die. And then you really like have a scary situation where you can lose an asset because these things can be broken beyond repair, or at least beyond the repair of like the realm of the business you have. So to your exact point, we took over a business or acquired a business that had gone through that phase where the previous owner bought it. They were a media company. They were dipping a toe in tech and realized, oh my God, we have to keep investing in this thing. Like every year we've got to put X amount of dollars just to keep it running. Like what a terrible deal. And so they immediately got out of it. And so I've definitely seen that pattern happen where it's like unless it's a very specific type of tech, it's going to suffer from that like constant attrition.
Yeah. So I always ask Igor, like, when's dev over? Like, never.
Yeah. When are we done? Never.
I can line up an entire year of tickets. Give me an hour. I'll line up an entire year of tickets. Line item. Never go away. Yeah.
I know we're short on time, but the other thing that did just strike me as you said that is we do see when in sellers that are working with agencies, we do see a lot of agencies just kind of running that are unnecessary. Like as if you're getting ready for a sale and it's a technical company and you're using an agency and they have a minimum, a lot of these agencies, they may be cheap, they may be affordable, like in different places all over the world, but they may have like a 2 developer minimum. And then they just run and they build and build and build because you have to have 2 developers to use the agency. And it may make sense in a lot of cases, but I would definitely get involved in that, maybe find someone to help validate if those things, because what we've seen is a degradation in systems where it's like, if they just let it be, it would have been fine, but they kept kind of creating more tickets. And it really was just to keep the developers busy, not necessarily to add value to the
I've seen that. And I personally had that with prior relationships, but I do want to clarify with Igor, he actually helped save me from that.
Of course. Yes.
Right. But that is something where I've definitely come across that in the past, where if you're not hitting their number every month, you're either getting their junior dev team or, you become a walking dead portfolio company as far as the is concerned. Yeah, basically.
So I think what you're saying makes sense. Have an Igor. If you don't have an Igor yet, find an Igor. Find somebody who can be a fractional CTO for you. I don't know if Igor's fractional, but if you have the scale or not, you can always find someone to just come in and, figure out a way to incentivize them. They will be kind of expensive, but I think it's like you wouldn't do a deal without a lawyer on your end. I would recommend having some sort of advocacy and expertise in that corner.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a great takeaway. And Roman, unless you have any follow-ups, I think it's a good wrap.
I think we're good.
So we'll have Brent, Roman, thank you for showing up today. Hopefully we'll have more of these. I think that was really great, really, really insightful. We'll have your contact info in the exit prep session. If you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the notes. If you're listening to it, it'll be in the podcast. Real quick, do either of you want to chime in about how our users can find you?
On me, it's Didilio.com or Roman@Didilio.com.
Yeah, or just write to BizNexus. You'll be there.
Or BizNexus.
Yeah. If you want to check us out or want to sell a SaaS business in the B2B space, head to vernhq.com, VERNEHQ.com. You can find myself and my partner, Colin.
It's awesome. All right, Roman, Brent, thank you so much for taking the time to show up today.
Take care.
All right, guys.
Thanks.